that are about to take off. There's a bit of business on the order paper on this day. Very good morning. We are coming to you live from the National Assembly of the Parliament of Kenya on this 6th day of May, being a Wednesday, and the House is sitting this morning at 10 a.m. Since the pandemic struck the whole world, the House has changed its mode of sitting and how they are conducting their business. We have members on different locations, outside in the tents, in the lobbies, in the lounge, in the main chamber, to allow distancing. So this morning, we are going to come to you live and direct, courtesy of the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit and the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. Indeed, there is a bit of business on the order paper. This morning, we will look at the Finance Bill 2020, and this will be a first reading, which will be brought on the floor of the House by the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning. Later on, we shall have the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, which will be presented on the floor of the House by the leader of the majority. This Public Finance Management Amendment Bill will be coming in as second reading. There is more business on the order paper, including the approval of the mediated version of the County Government's Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 11 of 2017. And later on, we shall have approval of the mediated version of the County Government's Amendment number 2 Bill, Senate Bill number 7 of 2017. Later on, there are more motions, and we shall have other measures to address the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the leader of the majority will be presenting this, and being aware that the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus disease 2019, dubbed COVID-19, a global health pandemic, and that the pandemic has led to unprecedented global crisis. Cognizant that the government, non-governmental institutions, well-wishers, and health authorities globally have joined hands and put in place a number of measures to contain the pandemic, mainly through travel and behavioral restrictions, provision of necessary protective facilities, equipping existing health facilities, availing resources and providing necessary assistance and information, appreciating the policy measures and interventions being undertaken by the government through the Multi-Agency National Emergency Response Committee of Coronavirus, led by the Ministry of Health, to contain the spread of the pandemic and cushion Kenyans against its social and economic effects. Further cognizant of the legislative measures proposed by the executive, including the establishment of COVID-19 fund, the reduction of the value-added tax, among others, and further appreciating the role of the National Assembly in taking necessary legislative interventions and offering the necessary political and legislative support whenever required. Now, therefore, this House resolves to laud and appreciate the government of the Republic of Kenya for the action and policy measures undertaken so far in combating and spread of virus and addressing the economic effects of the virus in the country to cushion ordinary Kenyans from its effects. So indeed, there is care for this pandemic and how it's going to be moderated through this, what will be tabled by the leader of majority. And also to commend and appreciate all healthcare workers and service providers in the country for appreciating their selfless efforts. And members are already seated in the chamber, in the lounge, in the tents. social distancing and ready to execute the business for the day. And indeed, now making his way into the chamber this morning, being a Wednesday, is the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Cheboy. He will be presiding over the proceedings this morning, and I do wish to welcome you to follow these proceedings, which are coming to you live from the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit and the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, and also to follow these proceedings on our YouTube channel, on our Bunge TV, and on the Parliament on the Parliament Facebook page. It's time for prayers. Good morning.
For the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor as your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to performance of important trust in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled. Grant that we treat, consider all matters that shall come under our deliberations in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country, and of those whose interests you've committed to our charge. Amen. The cumulative number of members who are in this and other chambers constitute the required quorum, so therefore business will begin.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Who is this member who, can you kindly take your seat? I want to. Is that the member for Marsabit? Okay. You'll have to hold there briefly. Honorable members, I have a communication. Honorable members, you are aware that the second reading of the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, is scheduled to commence today, this morning, as order number 9. Before the bill is considered for second reading, I wish to bring to the attention of the House the following information. Honorable members, I have since received a letter from the leader of Majority Party requesting my consent to withdraw Clause 3 of the bill. In this letter, the leader of Majority indicates that he has since been advised that the amendment, which proposes to amend Section 50 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, may be deemed to contravene the provisions of Article 211 of the Constitution regarding the process of approval of borrowing by the national government. Honorable members, I have since acceded to the request. This implies that the bill will now proceed to the second reading and other stages without making reference to Clause 3. Thus, the bill should be dealt with as if Clause 3 was not part of it. I thank you.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
This particular order, we have the leader of Majority Party.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, May 6, 2020, in the morning sitting. Number 1, the legal notice number 37 of 2020 relating to the public procurement and asset disposal regulations and its explanatory memorandum from the National Treasury. 2, the 2020-2021 financial year annex of the estimates for state corporations for the financial year ending 30th June 2021 from also the National Treasury. Number 3, supporting documents for the budget of the financial year 2020-2021 from the National Treasury on A, the budget summary for the fiscal year 2020-2021 and the supporting information. B, the estimates of revenue, grants, and loans for the fiscal year 2020-2021, and finally, the financial statements for the fiscal year 2020-2021.
Very well. Next will be a member of the Procedure and House Rules Committee. I believe that should be Honorable Kangogo Bawin.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, the Wednesday, May 6, 2020. The fourth report of the Procedure House Rules Committee on amendment to the standing orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the House and its committee.
Very well. So we go to the next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Again, Honorable Bawin.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to keep notice of the following motion, that this House adopts the fourth report of the Procedure and House Rules Committee on amendments to the standing orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the House and its committee, laid on the table on the House on Wednesday, May 6, 2020, and pursuant to provisions of Article 124.1 of the Constitution and Standing Order 265, resolves to amend the standing orders as contained in the schedule of the report, and the orders that the amendments of the standing orders as contained in the schedule to the report shall come into effect on May 18th, on Monday 18th, May 2020. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. So we go to the next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
In this particular order, we have Honorable Sabina Chege. Is he in the House? Honorable TJ Kajwang. Honorable Eric Mushangi Njiru. I think that one is easily identifiable. Must be that one coming in, for obvious reasons. He does not share that with anybody else in this house. The member for Runyenjes, now you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 44, subsection 2C, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock regarding disparities in payment of tea bonuses to farmers in Runyenjes constituency. Honorable Speaker, Kenya Tea Development Authority, KTDA, is the managing agent for the Rukurire and Mungania tea factories in Runyenjes constituency. During the public participation for farmers initiated by KTDA on the April 2019, they agreed that farmers will be paid 30% of sold tea leaves between the months of July 2019 and December 2019 for deliveries to Rukurire Tea Factory, and 10 shillings per kilogram will be paid to deliveries to Mungania Tea Factory for the same period. However, on the contrary, the KTDA went ahead and paid farmers a uniform figure of 5 shillings per kilogram of tea leaves delivered to both factories. It is notable that farmers had already been advanced monies by various financial institutions on the hope of that they will be paid Kenya shillings 1050 for Rukurire Tea Factory and 10 shillings for Mungania Tea Factory, thus affecting income projections for the farmers from the two factories. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock to investigate and to compel the KTDA to pay the remaining balance of 5 shillings and 550 shillings per kilogram for tea leaves delivered to Mungania and the Rukurire factories, respectively, in order to cushion the farmers against losses on advanced money loaned them by the financial institutions. I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Asante. Thank you.
Very well. Before I refer it, obviously, to the relevant Committee on Agriculture, I see some interest, particularly from the former member for Runyenjes, who has since upgraded. Honorable Mbarire.
Mr. Speaker, I want to add my voice to that of the MP for Runyenjes constituency, Honorable Eric Mushangi, and say that this matter has brought a lot of problems and conflict on the ground amongst the farmers and the directors of the factories, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the committee looks into this matter, it will be important to understand at what point did KTDA decide the rates for which the farmers have to be paid. Mr. Speaker, normally the people who determine the rate for the farmers' pay is actually the directors of the factories. But here we are seeing KTDA that has become bigger than the farmers, yet it was created to facilitate the farmer. They are the ones now deciding how much a farmer should be paid, which is against the rules and regulations of the tea industry. They are actually pushing down prices on the farmer, down the throats of the farmer, without wanting to know what the farmer has to say. And it is this same KTDA that initiated the process of public participation last year, where this amount was decided. So we want to know on what basis they are deciding not to pay farmers as per the agreement. Number two, why in particular they have refused to listen to the Rukurire factory directors who have made it very clear that they have the money to pay, but they still insist that they pay 5 shillings. And this is causing unnecessary suffering amongst the farmers, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, and I hope this can be taken as a matter of urgency. It is causing a lot of suffering, and we want this matter resolved. And let me repeat here, Mr. Speaker, KTDA has become the biggest obstacle to the growth of the tea farmer, and I'm happy that we have the tea bill, and the tea regulations that will be coming later, we must clip the wings of KTD.
Very well. Honorable Mutunga, Kunyivia, on the same? Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would like also to add my voice to that statement by the MP for Runyenjes. Honorable Speaker, it is very wrong for an institution to get into a contract and initiate the process of getting into that contract. In fact, they discuss the details of the contract itself and then decide to go against that contract because they have the power. Honorable Speaker, KTDA behaves like a monopoly in the agricultural sector, especially the tea sector. Honorable Speaker, we cannot afford to wait and watch and see tea going the way the others have gone. In this country, we buy in pyrethrum. We were the best producer and marketer of pyrethrum in the world. We are producing 70% of the world pyrethrum. Now we are bypassed by small countries like Rwanda. Honorable Speaker, KTDA, as a monopoly now, has decided to mess the farmers by not giving them their dues. And when it comes to regulations, I would like to urge this House to look at them critically to ensure that KTDA does not have the power to change anything that they agree with the farmers and that they learn to stick to the contractual agreement. I support that statement, Honorable Speaker.
Okay, so we go to the next statement, request by Honorable TJ Kajwan.
Honorable Speaker, I request for statement pursuant to Standing Order 44.2C on tax evasion and repackaging of alcoholic beverages. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 44.2C, I wish to request for a statement from the chairperson, Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on tax evasion and repackaging of alcoholic beverages by several companies in the country. Honorable Speaker, we recognize the impact of public and private sector investments to the economic growth of this country. It is evident that the import businesses generate significant revenue in terms of import and custom taxes. However, in the last 12 months, several companies imported over 200 million empty bottles of 250 ml to Pragati Glass Gulf and Nanzia Industrial Estates, Nanzia Oman, Kio Limited, Zanza Road, Dar es Salaam, and obtained bottle caps from Torrent East African Limited. The said bottles were allegedly cleared duty-free into the country. The bottles were subsequently refilled with liquor in various brands, sealed with fake KEBS stickers and excise stamps, and sold to unsuspecting customers. The firms involved are Zenghong, Patiala Distillers, Ale Kenya Limited, Mount Kenya Breweries, Saiwan Enterprises, Vinepark, FRM, Platinum, Moonwalk, Tihan, and 2 Cousins Distillers. Honorable Speaker, the brands of manufactured and packaged manufactured and packaged by these companies with fake Kenya Bureau standard stickers and excise stamps are invariably low-cost products with very high percentage alcoholic content, sold mainly to low-income earners, mostly youths. Whereas the tops generally fall under the excise tax regimes, bottles do not, making it possible for fraudulent manufacturers to evade paying tax on bottles. And so, Honorable Speaker, concerned that tax evasion, counterfeiting, and refilling are a common practice in these companies, I hereby seek your directive to cause the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning to undertake an inquiry on the matter and report to the House on the following. 1, the total tax paid by the said firms between January 2019 and March 2020, and whether the firms are tax compliant, and if not, why. 2, the correlation between the quantities of the empty bottles and the bottle tops supplied.
Order, Honorable Kajwan. I think there is a breach of social distancing by some members in the front bench to my left. It's not easy for me to, that is the member for Homa Bay, and I'm not so sure whether the other one is the member for, that is Junet. I mean, you must sit in designated areas. Where Honorable Gladys is not the correct place. And I can see there are some chairs which are empty. Well, even consultation requires social distancing. The only other time you do not exercise that is probably at home with your family. There are several seats that are vacant. I see a few to my left. There are actually many. There are about 6 or even 7. So please grab one of them. If you have to consult outside, Honorable Junet, maybe when you come back, we will have, okay, proceed and consult. But still, even outside, you must observe social distancing. Okay, proceed, Honorable TJ.
Mr. Speaker, you know, we do not know how social this distancing is because when we keep so far away, it cannot be social anymore. But anyway, we will comply to all those guidelines that pertains, all those issues relating to COVID. Mr. Speaker, Roman 2, in the correlation between quantities of empty bottles and bottle caps supplied to or imported to the said farms, and the amount of tax paid for the period. Roman 3, whether the said farms and all their directors have been involved in tax evasion in the past, and if so, what actions has been taken against them? 4, what measures have been taken to ensure that all importers of such consignment pay the necessary taxes without failure? And what steps the Kenya Revenue Authority has taken to stem the vice, recover the lost revenue, and deter the state firms and others from engaging in tax evasion and scheme? And last, what action has the Kenya Bureau of Standards taken to ensure that the counterfeit goods are not sold to unsuspecting citizens? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
TJ, you asked me to go the direction of an inquiry. I do not know whether I want to do that. Probably, I mean, if it went the normal route of the statements, where once they are doing whatever they are going to do, they, bring the minister to the meeting and you be present, I think that will suffice.
Well,
because
Mr. Speaker, I may have used the words undertake an inquiry.
If you are to go the direction of an inquiry, I think the approach would be different.
I may have used those words to undertake an inquiry, but what I mean is that then the committee will conduct hearings to be able to report to the House on the issues that I've raised.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I would have also said that you put your mask properly, but I understand, having known you in a long time, I understand the difficulties you are having. I know. There are people who physically cannot put on mask correctly.
You see, Mr. Speaker, everybody has a different physiology.
I tell you, and
some of us have problems with big noses,
and in your
and big noses don't fit very well with the standard.
And in your case, Honorable TJ, I've seen that nose for a very long time, since the 90s. Now, that one, of course, will be referred also to the relevant committee, together with the previous one. The one by Honorable Mushangi, which would be going to agriculture. Now, we will go next to Honorable Sabina Chege. And meanwhile, Honorable Simon Kingara, member for Ruiru, and Honorable Omuse, member for Teso South, should be prepared to make their request.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order number 44, 2C, I wish to request for a statement from the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives regarding the elapsing of exemption of inspection of drugs into the country. Honorable Speaker, the Gazette notice stipulating the new rules outlined that Kenya Bureau of Standards will no longer inspect goods entering Kenya market without a pre-export verification of conformity to standards, popularly known as PVOC. This elapsed on 15th April 2020. This is therefore, it therefore poses a big challenge to the healthcare sector, especially at a time when the country is grappling with the burden of COVID-19 and other non-communicable diseases such as cancer. Honorable Speaker, it's against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson, Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives to consider the extension or to give the current status of inspections of drug into the country. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, elapsed on 15th of April 2020. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Which committee did you intend to have this statement committed to?
Trade.
Trade?
Yes.
Because it looks like there are also quite a lot of things that deal with the health, which you chair. But now, since it is going to trade,
this is for trade.
That is committed to that particular committee. Next is Honorable Simon Kingara. Is he in the house? Yes, please take your shot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for according this time to represent Rural people. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 44.2c, I wish to request for a statement from the Chairperson Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare regarding disparities in disbursement of cash transfer to the elderly, orphans, and persons living with severe disability. Honorable Speaker, we recognize the effort made by the government to contain the less fortunate members of our community through various initiatives, amongst them the Inua Jamii Cash Transfer Program. Loiro constituency is one of the most populated constituencies in the country with over 500,000 residents. A proportionate number of the population comprised of the elderly, orphans, persons living with disability, with minimal or no source of income. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the following. 1, what measures have been taken to ensure that all elderly persons, orphans, and persons living with severe disability are incorporated in the Inua Jamii Cash Transfer Program? 2, what steps has the government taken to ensure that the said needy persons who qualify to benefit from the program in rural constituencies and who from the year 2018 have not been included in the system despite having been registered? 3, Mr. Speaker, sir, could the relevant ministry state the timeline for the disbursement of the cash and opening up of the system to update the names of those who were not included previously? Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Very well. That's referred again to the relevant committee. We go to the Honorable Geoffrey Omuse. Doesn't seem to be around, so will be asked another in the next sitting. So now we go to response by the Departmental Committee on Administration's Chairman to Honorable Paul Koinange to the request by Honorable John Kiari, a member for Dagoretti South. Honorable Koinange, you are ready.
Can I proceed?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to make a statement regarding the death of Peter Gashero. Honorable Speaker, the Member of Parliament for Dagoretti South constituency, Honorable John Waweru, has requested for statement regarding the death of Peter Gashero from Kawangware. He particularly sought to be informed on the following. A, the actual cause of death of Mr. Peter Gashago Gashero and whether the death was a result of use of excessive force by officers. B, whether there is any ongoing probe into the death. C, the steps that the government has taken to identify the killers. D, the steps that the government has taken to ensure the family of the deceased is compensated, noting that deceased was the family's breadwinner. E, measures that the government has put in place to ensure that lives are not lost through brutality as a result of excessive use of force by security officers. Honorable Speaker, I wish to state as follows. Mr. Peter Gashago Gashero was taken to Salaya Medical Center on 3rd of April 2020 by a Good Samaritan after he had sustained injuries. However, he succumbed to these injuries on the same night. The postmortem report indicated that the deceased died as a result of injuries sustained at the back of the head. Honorable Speaker, the government is, however, not aware that police officers deployed to maintain law and order on the material date used excessive force. The case is pending under investigation. Honorable Speaker, the death was reported to Kabete at Kabete Police Station subsequently. The Office of the DCI immediately commenced investigations into the death. The Independent Policing Oversight Authority is also conducting parallel investigations into the death. Once investigations are concluded, the file will be forwarded to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions for appropriate action and advice. However, the government has no plans to compensate the family unless by order of court with competent jurisdiction. Honorable Speaker, the government has taken elaborate measures in ensuring that the security officers do not use excessive force when executing their mandates. These, among others, include A, all officers of the National Police Service are conversant with provisions of the 6th schedule of the National Police Service in regard to conditions as to use of force while in due execution of their duties. B, the National Police Service Commission has been spearheading a wide range of police reforms which are aimed at transforming the institution into a service which will serve the public in accordance with the law. C, police officers have been introduced to various forms of training, including training on human rights and public relations. D, the service has adopted a multi-agency approach in crime management, which has had a positive impact in service delivery and efficiency. Independent bodies such as Independent Policing Oversight Authority and Kenya Human Rights Commission have been established to check on the excesses of the service with individual officers who have been found to have abused their powers and mandate taken to court for prosecution. And Honorable Speaker, with your permission, I want to report. For the last 2 weeks, we have actually visited 15 police stations in the Nairobi Metropolitan. And I want to assure this House, police officers, they are doing their best not to harass the public. We had only a few cases where they have been reported to IPOA. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Koinange. And I do not know whether yes, what is it, leader? But Honorable Koinange, please take some seat in here. probably you take that one. And as you do that, there are quite a number of seats which are vacant, which I now, since 30 minutes are over, as per the Speaker's order, should be filled. That is seat number 311, 197, 118, 224, 279, 297, 331, 269, 81, and 59. Okay, leader of majority, and then I will give that member at the very end. And I do not know whether the Honorable Kiaria is in here. Okay.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Chairman Koinange for that good statement. Chairman, I think this house is a house of, or a house that represents the people of Kenya. The issue of police brutality, Mr. Speaker, is there every night on televisions. And I don't know, for the first time, the independent institutions that were formed under the new Constitution 2010, the ones that were formed in the 10th Parliament, Honorable Bandi is aware, did a good job. But the current ones we have, talk of IPOA, talk of the internal division of the police, the internal division of the police, talk of the Kenya National Human Rights Commission. The question that was asked is the circumstance under how this gentleman died. And we wanted an answer that, I mean, I'm sure the DCI moves with the first. Is one office that I can say that when a matter is raised, the culprits are apprehended within 24 hours. So I think, Chair, you need to be very, very firm. A lot of Kenyans across, from the lake to the desert, to the coast, to Nairobi, you saw the demonstration of, I think, where a body was taken to Muthaiga police station. Instead of receiving that body, the mourners and the people who were there were tear gassed. What is wrong with that OCPD, OCS of Muthaiga, allowing these people to come in, ask their representative, and ask what happened? You know, they were tear gassed, they were chased. So I think there's a lot that the police needs to do. And I think the chair and the committee, they need to move. And I think there are a number of commissions. IPOA, I think, to my satisfaction, the men and women who are in IPOA, we have approved you. We did not approve you to be an appendix, to be part of the government, to be part of the police, the National Police Service. You are an independent body. We did not approve you to be part of, the executive. You're supposed to check. The Inspector General of Police is an independent office. The Inspector General of Police is not part of the Ministry of Interior. He's supposed to work with, but he cannot take orders from other people. So I think these bodies, these individuals who have been given independent offices must give a verdict that can counter-check what the police say. The police cannot check themselves, particularly on the death of this individual. And I'm sure members will agree with me. We sit on these chairs to represent the people of Kenya. We don't sit on these chairs to represent anybody else. So I think, Chairman, every night if you open the television, from Western to everywhere, there are people who are in one way or other brutalized. You saw the story of Mr. Speaker. A policeman walks to a couple in one-bedroom house and says, "Why are you not wearing a mask?" inside their room. And he's removing the wife and the child. You have seen, Chairman, that the cessation pronounced by the president, the cessation of movement, and that's why this COVID-19 is moving. The cessation of movement, apart from the essential people who are allowed to move, other people are moving. Why? They are bribing the police. So I think, Chairman, we need to go, but finally we need to find out why there is more brutality on the innocent citizens of this country by the police.
That end, I do not know. Is that Honorable Pukose from the shape? Yes, proceed. And let's be brief so that I can give a few more members.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker.
I can see there is a lot of interest. So each member would be taking, just make a direct comment, and then we can proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the chair of the committee. But the report actually fell short of explaining what type of injury Mr. Gachagua had, because he only talked about, I want him to be very clear, he talked of an injury to the back of the head. But you need to tell us, what type of injury is it? Is it a penetrating? Is it gunshot wound? Is it a blunt trauma? Because police have been known to use various forces. Either they are doing executions of people, shooting them. So was this person shot? 2, was he also beaten by maybe a rungu or that kind of thing? Honorable Speaker, as we speak today, people of Kariobangi ward were evicted, about 5,000 families, and they are sleeping hungry during this COVID issue, and they are worried whether police are actually going to brutalize them, because these are people who are now exposed. Okay. And therefore, I think this is something that the chair needs to be very clear. What type of injury? Was this person shot? Was he what type of injury he was injured? Okay. So I need him to clarify that.
Minority leader. And then I'll go to the end there, then come this way.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members.
Mr. Speaker, the cases of violation of human rights by the security, our police services, in fact, it's not supposed to be a force. We changed it to a service. It's in the rise. It's on the rise. And Mr. Speaker, this is something that cannot be taken lightly. As I appreciate and congratulate the chair for the statement, I am at a loss, really, because the chair is a fellow member of parliament as us. The only thing that probably we want to ask the chair to do on our behalf is to be a little bit more hard on the government organs and government agencies. When you are told that there's going to be, that investigation is ongoing, who exactly is conducting this investigation? Because if it is the same police which is being suspected of having committed the crime, they certainly cannot conduct independent and factual investigation. And if it is IPOA, which seems to be weakening by the day, then we need, you need, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the chair to report to us on how many cases for the past 2 years have been reported to IPOA on issues of violation of human rights by the police, because we see it every day. And how many have been dealt with by IPOA, either conclusively or where IPOA has challenges, so that we can rate the performance of this institution. Okay. They are being paid by taxpayers' money, and they must deliver. So, Mr. Speaker, we must speak with one voice as a House and send a message to the executive, to this ministry, that they have no rights to molest Kenyans. They have the rights to maintain law and order, but maintain it with decorum. They cannot just bully people, beat people left, right, and center, kill innocent people. Someone who leaves the house to take a wife to the hostel, you come back and you are killed. I mean, how do you justify in a civilized country? So, Mr. Speaker, this is something that we expect the chair. And Mr. Speaker, the chair should understand us, that we are not being hard on him. We are just telling him that he represents us. He's the one who is chairing the committee that deals with this ministry. Please do it on our behalf. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Remember there? Then I'll come this way and then come this direction, starting. We will pick. So let's start from there. And who is that member? Bamachoge Borabu. It's difficult to trace you. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine could just be to react to the report that has been presented, and I want to thank the chair for giving us that brief report. Listening to what has been coming on the part of the police, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we seem to be dealing with an institution that has already decided what to do and how to do it. My intervention could be that the bodies that oversight the police are using public funds to be in existence. Why don't they be demanded to give conclusive reports on all the pending and investigation cases that affect the rights of the common people?
Okay.
We have seen police commit or are said to have committed a number of incidents. The case of this young man who was found out at night in Isili, or was going to help himself. The many innocent people are beaten because they are carrying their grievances to the police.
Okay.
I make the
Okay,
cases
please
that we really need.
Let's be brief, members.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we need a comprehensive strategy review of why the police are not making a difference. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Honorable Member for Mavoko.
It's not coming? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, chairmanship comes with responsibility, and I cannot agree with members more than to tell the chairman, I know you are chairman, and you represent people, you represent us. There is no way you can go to bed with these people. Everybody, every Kenyan knows that the police brutality in this country is at its highest peak. Mr. Speaker, it is very annoying when you see a policeman stop you in your car and ask you why you are not wearing a mask, and you are alone. Mr. Speaker, we have seen people maimed, and I'm agreeing with the leader of majority that IPOA is dead, the IG is not even independent, he thinks Matiang'i is his boss. I think he should stand up and work for his office. He should realize that he's independent. Mr. Speaker, I think the police fraternity must be taken regular checks of their status of their mind, because I think some of them might be mad and they're still in the service. Mr. Speaker, we must address this issue very seriously. Yesterday, when I saw people of Kariobangi being beaten, like they're not Kenyans at this time of COVID, yet we are fighting COVID, as if we are promoting it. Mr. Speaker, there is no way now you can tell me that the people of Kariobangi North have not spread that COVID amongst themselves, because there was no social distance, there was no nothing. I think we should protect Kenyans by all means from police brutality.
Okay. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the chair of the committee for bringing a report. Mr. Speaker, you can see the structural deficiencies in our constitution. And this is why in the next parliament, the person who will be responding to these questions must be a member of the executive, because you can imagine the chairman who is a member, who is not a member of the executive, who is a member of parliament, is now tasked with the responsibility of information. That is also very difficult. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, we must not be seen to be condemning the entire police service members, because there are over 100,000 members of the police force. Their criminal responsibility is individual. There are members within the service who are bad. There are other members who are doing exceptionally good job. And therefore, what we need to ask both the IG and the Independent Police Oversight Authority is to weed out the bad elements within the police service, and instead of condemning the entire police service of 100,000. And thirdly, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I know over the last few years, for those of us who come from a northern frontier district, there has been a tremendous improvement. Actually, we see there is a bit of improvement even the way they do it. In the past, they have been more brutal. I think what we need to do right now, because we are tasked with the responsibility of giving them budget, it is the high time now we empower those other institutions so that we have a properly trained, properly managed police service, so that those burdens within the police service are weeded out, and we deal with them and they carry their criminal activities as individuals.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Wanjira Wangari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I joined the House in thanking the chairman for that report. I remember sometime last session, I followed a question when a Meru University young man was killed. And what followed with the chairman and the IG and the IPOA is ping pong. And I hope that, Mr. Chairman, this time, he can be able to not only give the proper cause of death, but also the timelines in terms of investigation. How long will this investigation take? Because what I've seen the IG hide under is that something is under investigation. It took a lot of ping pong for that specific officer to actually be apprehended and to be interdicted. So even this time, let us not hide under just investigation and give the way forward in terms of timelines. How long will it take to actually take action on the said officer or officers?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think we should also be telling Kenyans to follow the law. It is proper to, I mean, they must follow the law. So that as we ask the police to follow the law, the citizenry must also be following the law. So I think we have really ventilated quite a lot on this. The rest we can have it in other matters that are coming ahead. So let's proceed to the next order. Well, what is out of order, Honorable Amalwa? Because I hope this is not a pretext to.
Thank you.
If it
Thank
is
you,
anything
Mr.
to do with
Speaker.
the police, I will
Mr.
not
Speaker,
allow it.
I'm rising to seek your direction. Last week, Mr. Speaker, I requested for a statement from the Chair of Health pertaining the dismissal of Dr. Joel Tomia from Cambridge. And she was to report today, Mr. Speaker, so please kindly.
Yeah, I am confident that this is just part of today. There is another today in the afternoon, but let's hear from because I thought I was actually in the chair when you sought that statement. And I thought she mentioned that it was going to be afternoon. Is that correct, Honorable Chair?
Yes.
That
yes.
is the position.
Yes, Chair, and my desire was to give that answer in the afternoon.
Yes.
Due to the depth of the other questions that were asked by members, the ministry asked for more time. So this afternoon, I'll give a proper position.
Okay. Let's hear you in the afternoon. No. Out of order. Out of order. So we are going to give the chair. Do you have something to say? Because there are a raft of issues. You are making a statement. There are quite a number of issues that have come up. Which one can you be able to pinpoint and?
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to assure this Honorable House that already the journey we have initiated with my committee by going to almost all the police stations in the Republic, we'll be able to unearth most of the issues that actually are making the police officers behave the way they usually behave. It is not only them, Honorable Speaker, and not all of them behave like that. We want to know why do they behave like that. Last year, Honorable Speaker, we gave some money for about 9 mental health centers for National Police Service, so they can be able to take care of the police officers. We will go back to them and know why things are not happening. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to assure this House, I'll follow all these issues with the police service and make sure that they are addressed and the people of this nation will feel that they're served by utumishi kwa wote. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I definitely know that members will not be satisfied with some bit. There were some specific and direct questions, like what kind of, like remember what Honorable Pukose asked and others. There are members who made general statements. There are others who are very specific like that of Pukose. I don't know who else made a direct one. And the member for Gilgil. I don't know if you picked any.
I have already noted in regard to the timeline of investigation and the cause of death and the way that which will be able to inform the family or the person the real what happened to death. For example, in this case, Honorable Speaker, he was hit by a sharp element on his head. But as we speak, Honorable Speaker, I'm consulting IPOA, Honorable Carrier, and the family, and there's already a postmortem report which has been given, so they're already doing that. I have a copy of the postmortem in my phone, and I'll give that, Honorable Speaker.
You'll table it, yes. Very well, and that's well done. So we proceed to the next order.
Order number 8, the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 10 of 2020, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the laws relating to various taxes and duties and for matters incidental thereto. Order number 9, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, second reading.
Leader majority.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, be now read a second time. Speaker, this is a small bill with only one clause. As you directed, clause 3 or clause 50, we have withdrawn based on the reasons that I gave when I wrote to the Speaker. So we're only dealing with the only one clause.
What is your point of order? TJ?
I do not know whether I have a different order paper or there is a supplementary order paper on the floor. But I see order number 9 relates to the committee of the whole house.
No.
That was last week.
Maybe that we are talking about afternoon. I know you are from the old school of thought, Honorable TJ. You have a problem
I'm
with
sorry, this is for 2:30.
2:30, yes.
You know we have definite challenges with IT. And until we are there, we didn't have courses. There were no units on IT, so you will bear with me
So,
as I orient myself.
so the leader is perfectly in order. Proceed, the leader of majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable TJ, you know, is very, he follows the thing, but I think he's ahead of us. He's already at 2:30, but we are this morning sitting. The principal object of this bill, Mr. Speaker, which I said has only one clause, is to amend Section 24 of the PFM Act 2012. And what does it do? It empowers the Parliamentary Service Commission to establish a fund for Parliament or the Houses of Parliament, that is both the Senate and the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, it's a long story. The members will recall in 2018, the chairperson of the Committee on Members' Services and Facilities made a request in writing to the Parliamentary Service Commission, requesting it to address the various concerns relating to the catering department, to the welfare, and to facilities within Parliament based on the issue of poor service delivery, how they are run, how accountability of the money that we pay is run. Because even the meals we take, you know, people out there think that we are given free meals. Everything here in this facility, in this Parliament, we pay. We pay for the food, we pay for the gym, so we pay for every facility. So there's nothing for free here in Parliament. So that committee did a report to this House, and they felt that there are a lot of things missing in terms of service delivery. Consequently, the Parliamentary Service Commission resolved to develop and publish regulations providing for the establishment of a catering fund under the PFM Act. So they decided, the Commission did a resolution that there should be funds, and the first one should be a catering fund, facility fund. Fund that the monies we are paying will be deposited, will be accounted for, and will be managed in accordance with the PFM Act and the relevant laws. At that time, the PFM Act in 2018, the PFM Act only allowed the Cabinet Secretary to make such regulations under the Act. The Cabinet, and this is the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, is the only one empowered by the PFM Act and by law to establish fund. So it was therefore necessary to amend this act to allow the establishment of a special parliamentary fund, including the catering fund, and to allow the Commission to publish the appropriate regulations, how these funds will be run. The Commission, who will run it, who will do the audited, accountability. So right now, for those of us who have been in Parliament for all these years, we pay for everything, but we don't get audited accounts. And that's why the committee felt, that's why we suffer poor service delivery. And for this reason, Mr. Speaker, this bill proposes an amendment to Section 24 of the PFM Act during the committee stage of the whole House, which we did it, in fact, in the Statute Law Mission Amendment Bill 2018. And during that consideration of the said bill, the amendment was passed by the House as a floor amendment, and it was identical to what is before the House to Clause 2 of the bill. So this law, we did it in the Statute Law of 2018. But it was a floor amendment. So after it was passed and assented to, that Statute Law Amendment Act of 2018, a case was filed in the High Court challenging the constitutionality of the floor amendment on the basis of lack of public participation. And this is case number Nairobi Constitutional Petition number 163 of 2019 by none other than my good friend Okia Omtata and 4 others, versus the Attorney General and 11 others. And in a decision of a 3-bench judge, they confirmed that amendment, being a floor amendment, which was subjected to a public participation, then it didn't hold water, and they said it is unconstitutional. So now, what are we doing? We are now making it proper. This bill was subjected to public participation by the chair of Finance, and the whole aim, Mr. Speaker, was to introduce this bill to delete and replace the provision whose passage was seen to have been procedurally offending the Constitution. So I chose to publish now a standalone bill, which has been subjected to extensive and robust public participation, as may have been seen from the report tabled by the Committee on Finance and National Planning. And the reason for the bill is to ensure that the regulations then will be published. So once we pass this bill, then the Parliamentary Service Commission will have the powers now to publish the regulations, and this will help us establish a fund. Members don't know that even right now, everything that we pay goes back to the National Treasury. So we want to have a fund that the money we pay for facilities, whether it's gym, whether it's the food or the catering, are put in one place, are accountable, and is based on members' scrutiny. They can scrutinize and say, this is a huge amount of money. So we don't want it just to be, haphazardly managed. So we really want it to be a fund that is managed well, with auditors, with the Committee on Facilities and Welfare can follow up, and the Parliamentary Service Commission, when they are submitting their budget, they can have a section and an area that this amount that was collected this year, this is how it was audited, and then based on that, we can question why the facilities are deteriorating, why the facilities are not up to. Now we pay money. The only option we have is we don't know where the money goes. We don't know how it is used. We don't know. So this house is a house that has oversight. So it must start with itself. So it must start to oversight the resources that members pay. So that is only one clause. And Mr. Speaker, I'm sure we will not spend much time. I ask the chair of finance, as I move to second, just on that clause, because the other clause, as you directed, I have withdrawn based on issues raised on the Constitution.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the Majority Leader who has ably moved the second reading of the PFM Amendment Bill number 2 of 2020. Mr. Speaker, I'll not repeat what he has said, but basically that is the objective is to give Parliamentary Service Commission the mandate to come up with any fund which they consider suitable to carry its mandate for the purpose of serving the members in the best and efficient way as possible. Mr. Speaker, this PFM Amendment Bill number 2 was published on the 4th March 2020 and was read for the first time on the 17th March 2020. Subsequently, Mr. Speaker, this was published in the print media on 20th March 2020 for the purpose of ensuring that all the people of Kenya are given a chance to make comments in line with the public participation requirement, which is a key in the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Mr. Speaker, we did all the processes which are required by the Constitution as pertains to the public participation, and by the time the time allocated for public participation elapsed, there was no memoranda received. That means no person in this country had any objection on this bill. Mr. Speaker, at the same time, as we were tabling our report on 29 April 2020, we had not received any comment from the National Treasury, though we wrote to them to give us their comments. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is deemed that the National Treasury equally had no objection, and therefore our report was tabled as per the requirements. Mr. Speaker, this bill, once enacted, will actually give flexibility to the Parliamentary Service Commission to set any fund, not limited to the catering, but it can set any other fund which will ensure that the members are served in a special way, or in an efficient way, Mr. Speaker, not a special way. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this. What is important in any fund is accountability, Mr. Speaker. And this is a house of records. And this is a house which is in charge of oversight. In case all what is being deducted from the members of parliament, be it for catering, be it for health club, is not accounted for properly, this house itself will be responsible. Mr. Speaker, and therefore this particular fund, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Dr. Nyikal and his team. I am surprised when it is from Dr. Nyikal. I would rather somebody else. And, well, let me not mention the name of the gracious lady there. Please, let us keep social distance. Please. I mean, it is important we follow, and we must show Kenyans that we do these things properly here. Yeah, so let's proceed and finalize, Honorable Limo. This is a fairly straightforward thing.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, indeed, I want to also congratulate you for really keeping an eye, because I've seen quite a number of members are going closer to each other. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude on this particular bill, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge this House to be very vigilant, especially when it comes to oversight. Even when we are talking about the current situation where there are a lot of funds which are being set everywhere. In fact, even the other house, the Senate, should be very keen at looking at what the county governments are doing and setting funds for the purpose of fighting COVID. And therefore, equally, this house must measure to the task when it comes to when it comes to oversighting all the funds, including the COVID fund, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying I want to thank the Office of the Speaker, the Office of the Clerk, and the Committee on Finance and National Planning for their logistical support during the processing of this bill. And finally, Mr. Speaker, of course, Majority Leader, who has also always supported us during this process. Mr. Speaker, I beg to second.
So, honorable members, I propose the question, which is the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, be now read a second time. Is that the mood of the House? Yes. Okay. So I put the question, which is the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 2 of 2020, be now read a second time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Public Finance Management Act 2012. Order number 10, motion, approval of the mediated version of the County Government's Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 11 of 2017.
What is your point of order, Honorable Majority Leader?
Speaker, my point of order is a serious one. Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order to seek your guidance on whether the mediated version of the County Government Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 11 of 2017, and the mediated version of the County Government Amendment Bill number 2, Bill, Senate Bill number 7, are proper before this House. Mr. Speaker, these are pertinent questions that need to be answered before this House proceeds to approve the mediated version of the 2 Senate bills. And Mr. Speaker, from the onset, allow me to note that although our standing orders, in particular, Standing Order 87, subsection 5, prohibit us from criticizing or calling to question the proceedings in the Senate, the standing order allows any member, including myself, of this House to debate. Speaker, what is going on there at the back?
Honorable Leader of Majority, I agree with you totally. I think today,
and they're consulting in the vernacular.
Today, the Honorable Wanga is not interested in distancing at all. She has actually held several meetings in chamber now, and she has just come in from a very long consultation with a minority whip. Now, I do not know, because it is interesting. You are dealing with people from Nairobi, from Kisumu, and the neighboring counties. Let us
listen to me.
Okay, I had actually decided to keep off that particular meeting until, of course, you decided to consult loudly. Now, proceed, the Honorable Leader of Majority.
So, Mr. Speaker, our standing orders allow any member of this House, including myself, to debate on the structure and the role of the Senate. Speaker, in this regard, allow me to refer to Article 123 of the Constitution, which is very clear on the manner of voting in the Senate. And simply put, Article 123 of the Constitution provides that voting on a matter before the House is done by elected senator or nominated senator of a respective county having been delegated to vote on behalf of a delegation. However, as you are aware, Mr. Speaker, the Senate is said to have recently adopted rules of procedure that allegedly fall outside the scope of Article 123 of the Constitution by allowing the concept of proxy voting. In fact, I am aware that for the 2 mediated Senate bills before this House that are now before this House for approval, the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Whip were allowed to vote on behalf of the senators who signed to vote. This is indeed quite absurd, Mr. Speaker, and unheard of anywhere in the world, in any parliamentary jurisdiction I'm aware of. Simply put, assuming we apply this in this house, all I could need to do is to rise and vote for as many members as I can by arguing that they are voting through me, which I will never do, Mr. Speaker. This is not only a strange and unknown procedure to the Constitution, but it is tantamount to erasing. It is tantamount to erasing Article 123 of the Constitution and assuming it does not exist in regard to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, therefore, if this absurd procedure was used in respect of these two mediated Senate bills, how then can we proceed as a House to approve the same today? Undoubtedly, what is tainted by illegality cannot be legal at the end. Mr. Speaker, what I'm raising in this House is even more fundamental, noting that the County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2020 will be brought before us for consideration, maybe this afternoon. If the same proxy voting will be applied, it means that the senator for Garissa, where I come from, Senator Haji, or any other senator will not vote to decide the amount to be allocated to their respective counties. A proxy will raise and purport to vote for all counties. In fact, two senators, being the majority leader and the minority whip, can vote for all senators. Then you will have done away with at least 45 senators. So only two of them voted against the 45 senators. It brings to question the import of Article 96(1) of the Constitution, which defines the Senate role as being to protect and represent the interests of counties. Mr. Speaker, it is for these reasons that I seek your indulgence and guidance on the legal and procedural propriety in terms of Article 123 of the Constitution, of the mediated versions of the County Government Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 11 of 2017, and the mediated version of the County Government Amendment Bill number 2, Senate Bill number 7 of 2017, before this House proceeds to approve the two senators. Mr. Speaker, I also want to table the proceedings of the Hansard. I'm not a madman. I did my homework last night. And I have the Hansard. And of interest, Mr. Speaker, is page 29 of the Hansard of the Senate, page 30 of the Hansard of the Senate, page 32 of the Hansard of the Senate, and more so, and I want to read, page 34 of the Hansard of the Senate of that day deliberations. And I read, Honorable Speaker, that is Honorable Lusaka, we shall now proceed to vote by roll call. The clerk at the table will call out names. The Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Whip will vote on behalf of senators who signed to vote. This is the answer, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we need guidance. We cannot make an illegality. So with this, Mr. Speaker, I table and ask for your guidance. I table the answer.
Before I give any guidance, I want to look at because it's a very serious issue, I want to look at the Hansard, those particular people, but I'll give a few members to ventilate, starting with the minority leader, then we'll go to the deputy minority whip. Then I'll come this direction. I do not seem to see any interest from this other side.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the majority leader has raised a matter that is so fundamental and that goes to the core of the democracy in this country. And Mr. Speaker, I agree that is really a shock that that really transpired in the Senate. And if the Hansard has captured the same, then to me it's a very sad moment, because there is no way, Mr. Speaker, that people of Homa Bay will have their votes cast by a senator from Kakamega. That cannot happen, Mr. Speaker. If at all the senator from Kakamega voted for the people of Homa Bay, it is unconstitutional, it's undemocratic, it's unrepresentative. But, Mr. Speaker, my concern is where this matter is raised by the majority leader. And with all due respect to the majority leader, Mr. Speaker, the procedure of enacting laws in this country is very clear from our Constitution. And it says that where the two houses approves different versions of the bill, then that bill goes for mediation. And in the process of mediation, we have equal number of representation, both National Assembly and the Senate. And the Committee on Mediation agrees on a mediated version of the bill. And that mediated version would be introduced in both houses simultaneously and to be dealt with simultaneously. So, Mr. Speaker, even if the Senate has not followed the correct procedure to deal with the mediated version of the bill, the National Assembly is blind to that fact, in my view. We have to deal with these mediated versions of the bill, and the Senate also deals with it. If they pass it through whichever method, flawed or otherwise, that is their business. It is our business to pass it procedurally in the National Assembly. And it will be upon the people of Kenya, and a majority leader is one of the people of Kenya, who can challenge the process in the Senate. But, Mr. Speaker, I find it a bit inappropriate for us as National Assembly to stop discussion on a mediated version of the bill. What we expect is the report from the various mediation, our representatives in the mediation committee, the chairs or the vice chair or whoever is leading or was leading the members of the National Assembly in these mediation committees should report to us what they agreed on. We deal with it procedurally as a house that respects the rules and procedures. Let the Senate that does not respect the rules and procedures deal with it unprocedurally. But as a house, Mr. Speaker, I just want to put it on record that there's nothing that would stop us from discussing the mediated versions of these two bills. Mr. Speaker, I rest my case.
You say you want the House to be blind to whatever proceeding happens there. How about when we have now been informed? What happens? What would be your take? It was fine before we knew, but now it's before the House and it has
Mr.
to be...
Speaker, you know, I still stand by my position. Why? Mr. Speaker, what we are dealing with is not a bill from the Senate. We are dealing with a report from the mediation committee. If the report was to go first to the Senate, then comes to the National Assembly, then it would be a different story. We would argue that because the process was not followed there, then we cannot deal with it. But what we are dealing with is a mediated version of the bill which was taken to the Senate and brought here. So we deal with it. Okay. Let the Senate also deal with it. Mr. Speaker,
let's hear Dr. Wamalwa, member for Kiminini and Deputy Whip. I'll come back to you at the end, Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious matter, and I was watching TV yesterday when the Senate was was doing their business, Mr. Speaker, and I was very perplexed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the process is very critical in determining an output. If the input, Mr. Speaker, is illegitimate, it is obvious the output is legitimate, Mr. Speaker. The process that was used by the Senate, Mr. Speaker, was fraudulent. And it goes without saying, Mr. Speaker, that the output is fraudulent as well. And it's not just on the mediated bills. All the bills, the process must be followed to the letter, Mr. Speaker. Parliament is a house of records, a house of traditions. There are do's and don'ts, Mr. Speaker. We follow the Constitution, And we have the standing orders, Mr. Speaker. When you look at the standing orders of the Senate, there's nowhere it is stipulated, Mr. Speaker, that the majority leader or the minority whip in this case can vote on behalf of the rest. So the obvious is, Mr. Speaker, that output, it is fraudulent, it is illegitimate, and it's null and void. In fact, I was looking for Kio Mtata, whether he saw that, Mr. Speaker. And I have no doubt who Kio Mtata is, Mr. Speaker. This is a matter he's looking at it critically. And we cannot accept, Mr. Speaker, something illegitimate from the Senate to come here. Mr. Speaker, there's technology. There is Zoom. In this National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, we have many holding areas. I'm not seeing the Senate doing this. They should have invited the other senators to sit in the lobby or whichever areas, then they can do the voting through Zoom. But because voting was done fraudulently by 2 senators, it is my humble request, Mr. Speaker, that it must be rejected and they must follow the process. I thank you.
Member for Homa Bay Town constituency. Yeah, I'm coming this side. I'll give 2 or even 3 members. What is it, Honorable Leader Majority? Because this is your issue, so we are trying to get views from other members also.
Chair,
Actually,
what is in question is Article 123 of the Constitution. Even if we do this bill, we pass it. This bill is supposed to go for assent to the president, because the Senate has passed it illegally. So I think this House is under obligation. That's the point I'm raising. If we pass it the way the people are saying, and then somebody challenges in court, what is the president assenting to? He is assenting to a bill where in one house, Article 123 of the Constitution was violated. There was an illegality.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying.
Okay, let's hear a member for Homa Bay, then I'll come to a few members from this direction, and then we will make progress.
Mr. Speaker, under the Constitution, there are bills which can only originate from the National Assembly, and there are bills which can originate in either house. Mr. Speaker, in respect of these 2 bills,
No, of course I don't.
they originated from the Senate. And communication came under the Constitution and the standing orders of the National Assembly on them. The National Assembly treated these bills from the first reading to the 3rd committee stage and to their passage. Mr. Speaker, in respect of these 2 bills, the National Assembly proffered amendments to the versions of the bills which came from the Senate. So that I'm raising the issue. If indeed this House were to be mandated to interrogate whether a bill coming from the Senate was procedurally passed, at what stage do we do so? And Mr. Speaker, without saying that in law it should not be the case that each House is oversighting the other, my view is that if there were to be a challenge in terms of the procedure that the majority leader is now raising, it would be raised when the bill is communicated and first lands here, not when the House has treated it and has made a resolution on it. Mr. Speaker, in the context of these particular 2 bills, if you would permit me, the National Assembly recommended, Mr. Speaker, amendments, various amendments.
Minority Whip.
Mr. Speaker, I know Honorable Kaluma is a renowned lawyer, and he is a mediator, and even he worked with PLO Lumumba. But Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, this is not court, this is parliament. There is a ruling of the Speaker, Mr. Speaker, that said matters of constitutionality, a member can raise it any time when the bill is before this House, whether before it's tabled or after it is tabled or within it is tabled or when it is even being discussed. So I wanted to remind him as a renowned lawyer. When I was arrested the other time, he was my lawyer before the NTV stations. I even sent him last week the video. I told him, can you remember this? I respect him as a lawyer, but you see, Mr. Speaker, he thinks we are in Supreme Court. We are in Parliament.
I thank my whip in whom I have utmost respect.
It's good
Mr.
you
Speaker.
said my whip, not my client.
It's the minority whip in whom I have utmost respect. But Mr. Speaker, on this I beg to agree. What I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, is that what we have now is not the bill which was transacted in the Senate with whatever defect the procedures leading to it could have treated. The distinction I'm making is that what we have now is a mediated version of the bill. And Mr. Speaker, that now requires me to make the second point I wanted to make. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution at Article 93, Sub-Article 1, establishes one Parliament of Kenya with two houses. Mr. Speaker, these are two equal houses given distinct and separate mandates, as we know under Article 95 for National Assembly and 96 for the Senate. Mr. Speaker, it is not contemplated in my respectful consideration of the Constitution that once either house discharges their mandate, more so in relation to bills which have to be transferred between houses, that either house either exercises oversight over the procedures antecedent, the other could have gone through in reaching a bill before its transmission. Mr. Speaker, if we were to go that direction, and I request the majority leader, then really we will hamstring the entire institution of parliaments, particularly in relation to the transaction of bills which have to go through. I see a situation where this House will transact a bill legitimately, and then the Senate, upon being transmitted to the bill which requires to go there by the Constitution, will be sitting saying, what was the quorum in the National Assembly? How many MPs voted? Mr. Speaker, the presumption in law is that when a bill is duly transmitted from one house to the other, it is not the business of either house to go into the antecedents and the procedures which went into it. That is a mandate now of other Kenyans. We don't have a constitutional mandate between the two houses to oversight one another. Mr. Speaker, if you would allow me to raise the third point, in this particular one,
so that I can give another member.
Mr. Speaker, this is a short one.
If those ones were...
Because I sat in this mediated committee, I thought it would be useful information.
Very quickly then.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, what we did when this bill was transacted is that the House recommended various amendments to the bill from the Senate. A mediation committee is then established. My view is that if you look at the provisions relating to mediation committee in Article 112, in Article 113, against Article 123 that the majority leader is speaking to, Mr. Speaker, it is now not defined in the mediation committee how voting is to take place. And I'm saying that in this respect, all our amendments as National Assembly were agreed to in mediation. Okay. I request we go to the business.
Honorable Kimunya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me speak as Member of Parliament for Kipipiri. If the House approves, I'll be moving the motion as Chair of the Mediation Committee. It's true that what the leader of the majority raised may be a serious matter. But I want to agree with the leader of the minority that here we are not talking about a bill that is serially processed. The process in the Senate, and after Senate has processed to finality, bring it to the National Assembly. We are talking of a parallel process where the two mediated versions are supposed to be approved by both houses simultaneously. And after the two houses have concurred, then it's sent for assent. If the two houses don't agree, then it's a totally different ballgame. Mr. Speaker, the matter that the leader majority has raised would have been best raised when the communication by the Speaker is made that the Senate has passed its version. Then we can debate in terms of did they pass it properly. But in the event that they agreed with us, and I can tell you most of, if not all, the amendments that are in the mediated version is what this National Assembly wanted. So basically, we spent a lot of time to do amendments, and when we have gains, instead of securing those gains, we are now even doubting the Senate where they have ceded to us on all the amendments that we made.
Okay.
And Mr. Speaker,
please,
Mr. Speaker, I think the thing we need to look at here is the procedure, the mediated version that we are bringing here today has not come from Senate.
I'm also trying to hear other
Has
members,
not come from Senate.
especially those ones who are not members of the
Yes.
mediation committee, because
So that's what I wanted to establish that.
generally going to be. I've given you an opportunity.
Okay.
So let me give another member.
Thank you.
Honorable member from Mogotio. Were you also a member?
No, I'm not a member.
Okay.
Thank you, Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I think the issue which the majority is raising is on procedure, not really on the substance of the mediation. And having looked at the Senate yesterday when they were proceeding with their chairman, we are trying to say we want to micromanage the Senate procedures and standing orders. My view is, if we have issues with the standing orders of Senate, maybe it's not the right forum to raise it, Chair. I think what I feel is that they conduct their business as per the standing orders of Senate. And when it comes here, we conduct our business, and therefore I agree with the minority leader that we should not so much micromanage Senate. Otherwise, what I saw yesterday going on in Senate, it will be troubling if we agree with the majority leader, because what they are doing right now, they have what we call designated members come only weekly. They don't bring everybody on board every week. They only invite certain members to come to Senate, and they vote on behalf of their colleagues. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Speaker.
I've heard you members, and I think this will take a long time, and we may not be able to, completely decide on it now. I hear honorable members, I hear, for example, Honorable Mbadi saying that we should be blind. We were to go to the parables of the Bible, like the gentleman who was healed by Jesus, made to see, and going back again and saying, let me close my eyes to be blind. I see the direction that we are going. I see an issue of members also saying that we could easily pass this or transact them one way or the other and allow any other person to go to court and challenge this. It's a right procedure, but sometimes we also don't need to act in vain. The issues of Article 123, I hear very clearly. Honorable Kaluma is saying, let's be blind to whatever issues are coming from the Senate, so that they can also help us to be blind when we send ours there. Now, these are arguments one way or the other. But honorable members, I think this is a very serious matter. This is a very serious matter. It involves, there are quite a number of issues that must be looked at very seriously. And looking at the weight of this issue, I think I'm actually convinced to step down this matter to allow further a more substantive ruling on it. We look at all the issues on their own merit, and there are arguments here, both sides. Both sides of the arguments, in support of us proceeding, and others not supporting that that position. That is something that will be looked at into more with a lot of thought put into it. So, honorable members, I think the best thing is for us to step down these two. We step down order number 10. And since we have the same thing at order number 11, we also step it down to allow better consultation. Right? I think that's the best way. So we go to the next order.
Order number 12, motion. Other measures to address the effects of COVID-19 pandemic.
Leader majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that good guidance. And we are not here to violate the Constitution. Article 123 must be upheld. I have no other interest. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that aware that the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus 2019 COVID-19 a global health pandemic, and that The pandemic has led to unprecedented global health crisis. Cognizant that the government, non-government institutions, well-wishers, and health authorities globally have joined hands and put in place a number of measures to contain the pandemic, mainly through travel and behavioral restrictions, provisions of necessary protective facilities, equipping existing health facilities, availing resources, and providing necessary assistance and information. Appreciating the policy measures and interventions being undertaken by the government through the Multi-Agency National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus, led by the Ministry of Health, to contain the spread of the pandemic and cushion Kenyans against its social and economic effects. Further cognizant of the legislative measures proposed by the executive, including the establishment of COVID-19 fund, the reduction of the value-added tax, among others. Further appreciating the role of the National Assembly in taking necessary legislative interventions and offering necessary political and legislative support whenever required. Now, therefore, this House resolves, A, to laud and appreciate the government of the Republic of Kenya for the action and policy measures undertaken so far in combating the spread of the virus and addressing the economic effects of the virus in the country to cushion the ordinary Kenyans from its effects. 2, to commend and appreciate all health workers and service providers in the front line of our country for their selfless effort, commitment to service, care, and compassion towards persons who have been infected or affected by the virus. To urgently put in place modalities of facilitating the continuity of the business of the House remotely using modern technology while still upholding the constitutional requirement on public access and participation, quorum, voting in Parliament, Mr. Speaker. And to supplement COVID-19 fund and other measures put in place, the Budget and Preparation Committee reviewed the proposed annual estimates for the financial year 2020-2021 with a view to allocating fund towards cushioning the country further from the short-term and long-term effects of COVID-19, particularly allocating and ring-fencing funds for Roman 1, the provision of personal protective PPE, testing and medical equipment, including adequate ventilators, and finally, establishment of a suitable national health facility for the treatment and management of infection and viral disease such as COVID-19 with a bed capacity of at least 1,000 persons. Mr. Speaker, first I want to ask members. You know, I am not in some forums. There are some members who are saying, oh, these motions are being delayed, others are being delayed. I think it is the prerogative of the House Business Committee to make sure that important agendas come. And today I'm happy to stand here that this House has passed the relevant legislative laws, the tax laws, that will not only cushion the economy from these effects, but also help Kenyans who are staying at home who have been affected by this COVID-19. And 2, that this House has also passed the supplementary appropriation bill, which was assented to by the President, that now allocates serious resources to the key sectors that are in the war against COVID-19. So the National Assembly has done its duty. I can say it without no fear of contradiction. And we have also passed more than 5 regulations. One establishing the COVID-19, the various ones on the Public Health Act, the ones on the curfew, and many, many others. And even the one on the VAT, which this House has approved. So the National Assembly in its last 4 sittings has risen to the occasion and complied with Article 94 and 95 of the Constitution in discharging their legislative representation and oversight. And I want to thank the Chair of Budget, the Chair of Finance, the Chair of Health, and the committee members and the House in general for making sure, and the leadership for rising to the occasion. But Mr. Speaker, because of COVID-19, and I said it in this motion, we are not going to violate the Constitution and the standing order in how the House is run. The Constitution gives you how to vote. The Constitution gives you how to prosecute a bill from first reading to second reading, third reading. You cannot circumvent. You know, I saw Honorable Kimunya arguing. I told him we have no problem with your bill, my friend. What we have, you are the chair of the mediator committee. We have a problem with the procedure of voting in the Senate. That's what we have. A whole article of the Constitution was kept somewhere, and then a process was done. That is where we have. And the Speaker said he's going to make a communication. And I'll ask the Speaker to write to the Speaker of the Senate and ask him to confirm, because I have the answer, whether that violation of the Constitution happened. It's more, I mean, this is we have to protect. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, so we have cushioned companies. We have cushioned ordinary Kenyans. And we have given resources to the Ministry of Health. I hope, I'm told the report that was tabled last week by the Chair of Health was disowned yesterday by the PS Health, that the 4 million on Mandasi and tea is not there. So I hope the Chair, when she gets an opportunity, she will tell her what has happened. But Mr. Speaker, there are two things we must make it very clear. Kenyans must follow the health protocols and guidelines given to them. They must follow the curfew. They must follow the rules on secession. And I want to make it here very clearly that the only person, the only organ that can declare cessation of movement is the National Security Council, delegated to the Minister for Interior. Governors cannot, and if they're hearing me, governors cannot declare cessation of movement. You know the problem in this country, everybody thinks he can play around with the Constitution, the way the Senate is voting through two individuals. Cessation of movement. So Speaker, people are moving. People are moving everywhere. They are bribing. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say it here. The police, the men and women who are manning these roadblocks of secession must be given an allowance. What they are given is only tea and bread. Now you give them tea and bread, and somebody comes with 10,000, he'll allow him. These police officers must be given special allowances, just like our health workers who are in the front line. Today, people can go to Garissa, they can go to Mombasa. Kenyans must follow the health protocols that we are given. We must observe social distancing. We must observe wearing of masks. And Mr. Speaker, police must stop brutality. If you are given the numbers who are killed by police compared to the numbers who have died of COVID-19, the difference, I think the ones who are killed by police are more. I mean, that's, you know, I saw somebody here saying, in northern Kenya, there is extrajudicial killing even taking place in coastal northern Kenya. Somebody, you know, a member of parliament from that region. It's very, very shameful. You are represented here to talk on behalf of your people. So we are telling the Inspector General of Police, an independent office, you are not a surrogate to anybody else. You sit in a National Security Council. You must tell your police officers who are roguey, who want to make a kill out of this pandemic, to stop what they are doing. It is very shameful for the president to apologize on behalf of the police. How can the president of the Republic of Kenya, commander-in-chief, is apologizing on behalf of the police? The Minister for Interior is not apologizing. The Inspector General of Police is not apologizing. I mean, it's shameful. In fact, if the president today apologizes on behalf of something that happened in this house about my office, I will resign. I will resign as a leader of majority. The buck stops with me. So the president has apologized on your behalf, and you are not remorseful. So Speaker, every night you watch the TV, the Minister for Health, who has done a very good job, Honorable Kagwe, tells us the situation. The next story is how police have killed people or maimed. You saw the lady in Busia with a small child who was told to sleep on a cell. So all of us together, this is a pandemic. You have seen what's happening in the US. The people of Isili, Madare, Kawangware, Old Town, you have no choice. Let us lead. In fact, as members of parliament, let us lead by testing. We must do more mass testing. We must do more mass testing. And leaders, let us please start from tomorrow. Let us lead and say members of parliament are going to test through mass testing in countries where the numbers, and the letter, I mean, the media who said 17, you better take the letter from the speaker. There's no member of parliament who's positive. But you are aware our colleagues in Tanzania have died. We have in Tanzania, there are 2 members who died and 2 former members. So I think, but we must get a language to talk to the people. People are scared of the quarantine. People are scared of payment. I really want to ask the Governor Joho, you are doing a good job until you became a dictator. You know you are doing a good job until you say, if you are not going to test, you'll see me. See you as who? You can't come to my house and test my children by force. It's against the Constitution. So even leaders, let us all work together. This thing is affecting our daily life. It's affecting our economy. It's affecting the lives of our people. This is a moment when we must forge together, the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, the citizens, the president, and the leader of the opposition. All of us must speak with one voice. And we must take this disease very seriously. We must take it very seriously. It doesn't know the age, whether you are young. It doesn't know whether you are old. It doesn't know whether you are a female or a male. It doesn't know whether you are a Muslim or a Christian or any faith. And Mr. Speaker, finally to conclude, if you read the Bible and if you read the Quran, you read about the prophets, the many prophets, the over 25 prophets, how communities were destroyed when they refused to follow the teachings of the Almighty God. Those of us who believe in God, please, in our homes, it's only God who brings calamities. It's God who brings diseases. He used to destroy other communities using floods and fire. But now he has sent a virus that we can't see even. He has sent something to destroy the world that we cannot see with the naked eye. We're only being told by those who use laboratory equipment that they have seen it. So those of us who believe in the scriptures, whether we are at home or whether we are somewhere, please let us pray to the Almighty God and ask for forgiveness and ask Him to spare us of this pandemic. It needs God's intervention. It needs God's intervention. As much as we do a lot of the protocols, as much as we look for...
Majority, what is your point of order?
Maybe he doesn't believe in God.
What is out of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, is it in order for the leader to allege that the Almighty God has sent the coronavirus to this country to the world. Is it in order for the leader of majority? Because, Mr. Speaker, I think these are matters of religion.
Don't go beyond there. If you go beyond there, we'll be contributing. But I don't know about your religious persuasion. I have listened to Majority Leader. I didn't hear him say that the Almighty God sent. But if
Mr. Speaker, I am a person of faith and scriptures, and I have read prophets and communities that were destroyed when they disobeyed the scriptures. And I don't need to teach him. And the virus cannot just come like that. For you, you might have your reasons. This is my opinion. That as much as we are doing everything, those who are looking for vaccine, those who are making sure that we do social distancing, those who are, we are saying we wear a mask as I'm doing it, but above all, solution to every problem is found in the scriptures, my friend. Read the Bible, read the Quran. Even you are told when you are stressed, you pray. So I'm only asking Kenyans, wherever they are, do not pray, pray, pray. If that is what you have a problem with, then when you contribute, you tell us who other than. I'm talking about the Almighty God who created the heavens and the earth, who made you leave your house this morning and come to this chamber, who will make you a member of parliament. I'm talking about Almighty God, and who nobody is powerful than him. Nobody is powerful than him. Today you have seen, today, for example, you have seen, for the first time, Corona has made everybody equal. Trump is crying. The Chinese president is crying. The small and the big all are crying. Corona has made everybody equal. It doesn't choose the king and the queen. Prince Charles was infected. Prime Minister of Britain was infected. I'm only saying, Kenyans, let us pray. Let us pray in our homes. I beg to move and ask Honorable Bandi to second.
Honorable Bandi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to first start by thanking the Leader of Majority for coming up with this motion. Mr. Speaker, Kenya, like any other nation in the world, is facing tough times. And we all know that managing and controlling this pandemic is not easy. We are working hard, Mr. Speaker, but this is a pandemic. This is not an epidemic. So, Mr. Speaker, we are confronted by a number of challenges that we must deal with. There is the health crisis that we are all aware of. We also have issues of social intervention, humanitarian issues. But above all, Mr. Speaker, even if we manage to control this disease, the economic effect, the economic challenges is going to live with us for quite a bit of time. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is a time that as a country we must speak with ourselves. We must look inwards and look for solutions to our problems based on our environment and our circumstances. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by talking about the health issues, because that is the most critical, the most immediate. Whereas I would start by appreciating the work of the executive, the work of the ministry, the work of the president in trying to manage this pandemic. But, Mr. Speaker, we must also tell the government in no uncertain terms that their reaction and response has been wanting in a number of ways. Number one, Mr. Speaker, the government has been talking to us because we are looking for exit strategy. We have to get out of this pandemic in one way or the other. And for us to get an exit strategy, the executive, the government, the ministry must lead the initiative. We are seeing and we support and we appreciate the daily reports about the numbers. But, Mr. Speaker, we need explanations. We were told that this country has capacity to test about 30,000 people, 37,000 people in a day. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, the highest number that has been tested is just slightly over 1,000 in a day. What is the reason? What is the justification? What is the explanation? This is not forthcoming. And we want to tell the ministry that they must step forward. They must escalate. What they have been saying is good, but it is not good enough. Now they must speak with us and tell us, for how long are we just going to be seeing the numbers of 22, 25, 45? What is the game plan? Every country in the world has a game plan. So, Mr. Speaker, the government must be serious about mass testing. If there are no resources, provide it. And, Mr. Speaker, it is disheartening that the budget estimates have been tabled here. And if you look at those budget estimates, it is business as usual. There are no clear provisions for resources to fight this pandemic. Why is the government of Kenya taking Kenyans for a ride? For how long are we going to wait for this government to behave normally? And they are the ones who are telling us not to behave normally because the disease is going to treat us abnormally. It is the government that is behaving normally, and the disease is behaving abnormally. So, Mr. Speaker, we are waiting for clear government intervention in terms of resource allocations. I would tell you, if you look at the budget estimates that were tabled here last week, Mr. Speaker, the amount that is directly linked to COVID-19 is 2.6 billion in a budget of trillions. Mr. Speaker, something is happening in this country that needs to be addressed. And we are the people's representatives. We must address it. Mr. Speaker, the other bit is about social intervention. Mr. Speaker, the biggest problem that our people are facing is food. They are hungry. Forget about even COVID-19. In fact, our people tell you, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you go to your constituency. They will tell you how many people have died of COVID. And I'm not saying we should be relaxed. But they will tell you they are suffering and they are likely to die from hunger. If you look at our budget estimates, this is not a time to invest on capital expenditure, to build roads, to do what? We can live without roads as we eat. Right now, what Kenyans are concerned about is they want to eat. So, Mr. Speaker, we must provide funds for our people to eat. Every constituency, the poor people, those who are living below poverty line, must get government funding to be able to eat. And by the way, these figures are there. Mr. Speaker, like if you come to my constituency, they are numbering about 6,000 households. I'm sure if you extrapolate that to the whole country, it comes to about 1.8 million to 2 million households. Household is averaging 5 to 6 people. If you have to feed these individuals, Mr. Speaker, for like 4 months, 5 months, you need not more than 20 billion. This is something this country can afford. So, Mr. Speaker, as a House, this is the time for us to rise to the occasion, look at the budgets that have been tabled here, and deal with it radically to make sure that food is provided to our people. Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority has talked about police brutality. Other members have talked about police brutality. I want to repeat it, that whereas we support the enforcement of various regulations and rules so that our people don't get infected, it is not a license to anybody in this country to reintroduce police torture, to reintroduce cases of mishandling Kenyans. Our constitution is robust about human rights. Human rights must be respected. Where they violate those rights, there is the due process of the law. Take due process of the law, but don't kill our people. They don't deserve to die. The Constitution is clear. No one is allowed to take out the life of any individual. Please, whoever is taking advantage of this crisis to bring dictatorship to the country, stop it. Even the cases we are seeing of eviction in some areas, I'm not talking about those people who have been stealing land, like in Ruai. Those ones you can deal with, because you don't even see them there. But, Mr. Speaker,
I'm sure you're almost concluding.
No, I have 10 minutes, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, you don't have 10 minutes. No, you actually don't have 10 minutes, if you remember. If you remember the resolutions of the House that we did on some times back, the debate between April 22nd and April 29th, May 6th, you have 5 minutes. But anyway, you have a minute to conclude, minority.
Mr. Speaker, I thought that is something we discussed. I think it was a mistake, and the clerk there on the table knows that the leader, we agreed that I have 10 minutes, and please don't take away my 10 minutes. Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking as the leader of minority.
Yes, that is where you...
And that voice must be heard.
Minority leader.
And the chairman of one of the most serious party in the country. Mr. Speaker, let me just touch on the three last issues. On economic issues, the livelihood of our people I've talked about. I am talking about businesses. Mr. Speaker, we must create economic stimulus to help the small and medium enterprises. Mr. Speaker, I have talked about food, but let me put it this way. Kenya is a net importer of food, and every country is struggling to survive. What strategy does this government have in the event that the countries which give us food decide now to use their foods locally? This is the time to respond. Finally, Mr. Speaker, because I don't want to disagree with you much, you are my friend.
No,
I want to talk about...
Minority leader, you actually have 10 minutes.
Yes, I have 10 minutes.
I have confirmed that from the motion.
Thank you. But let me conclude, because now I think I've said the bit that I wanted to say. I want to just touch on the two last issues. One is the financial sector, which is likely to face distress. The government must come up with a strategy of ensuring that this country does not have the financial sector come down in terms of financial distress. And the government financial distress, Mr. Speaker, interestingly, even after talking about what I said about the estimates, even though the government is not providing funds to respond to COVID-19, but you still find our public debt going up. The most unfortunate is that the government is even proposing to increase domestic borrowing from slightly over 200 billion to over 400 billion. And yet they are claiming to be reducing the CBR rates downwards. How on earth would you think of increasing domestic borrowing at this time? Mr. Speaker, my concluding remarks are, please, the government get serious, even though we are in a crisis, but get serious. Mr. Speaker, allow me this. There are areas in this country where people are dying of floods. Over 100 people have died. COVID has only killed 14. All the attention is on COVID. People of Budalangi are left on their own. People of Nyando are on their own. People of Karachuonyo are on their own. People of Kochia are on their own. People of Migori, Nyatike, Konyango, Luanda, they are on their own. No one thinks about them. Mr. Speaker, which is this country that we are living in? The government gets serious. If you have been sleeping, please wake up. And if you have been sleeping because of the handshake, Mr. Speaker, the handshake did not mean that now you do things the way you want. They must know that minority still exists. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I second.
Order, Honorable Karuma. Buddy is back. Honorable Buddy is here. Why are you saying Honorable Buddy is back? But anyway, before I propose, shall I ask that member who is at the corner? That must be Honorable Guna. Please be kind enough to yourself and the others to have the mask on. I know it is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Honorable members, I'll propose a question that aware that the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, a global health pandemic, and that the pandemic has led to an unprecedented global health crisis. Cognizance that the government, non-governmental institutions, well-wishers, and health authorities globally have joined hands and put in place a number of measures to contain the pandemic, mainly through travel and behavioral restrictions, provisions of necessary protective facilities, equipping existing health facilities, availing resources and providing necessary assistance and information, appreciating the policy measures and interventions being undertaken by the government. Other members? Other members, I'll take that again. Appreciating the policy measures and interventions being undertaken by the government through the multi-agency National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus, led by the Ministry of Health, to contain the spread of the pandemic and caution Kenyans against its social and economic effects. Further cognizance of the legislative measures proposed by the executive, including the establishment of the COVID-19 fund and reduction of the value-added tax, amongst others. Further appreciating the role of the National Assembly in taking necessary legislative interventions and offering the necessary political and legislative support wherever required. Now, therefore, this House resolves: A, to laud and appreciate the Government of Kenya, Republic of Kenya, for the action and policy measures undertaken so far in combating the spread of the virus and addressing the economic effects of the virus in the country, to caution ordinary Kenyans from the effects. B, to commend the appropriate all healthcare workers and service providers in the country for their selfless efforts, commitment to service, care, and compassion towards persons who have been infected and or affected by the virus. C, to urgently put in place modalities of facilitating the continuity of the business of the House, remotely using modern technology for upholding the constitutional requirements on public access and participation, quorum, and voting in Parliament. And D, that to supplement the COVID-19 fund and other measures put in place, the Budget and Appropriations Committee reviews the proposed annual estimates for the financial year 2020-2021 with a view to allocating funds towards cautioning the country further from short-term and long-term effects of COVID-19, particularly allocating and ring-fencing funds for, 1, the provision of protective equipment, PPE, testing and medical equipment, including adequate ventilators, and 2, establishment of a suitable national health facility for the treatment and management of infections and viral diseases, such as COVID-19, with a bed capacity of at least 1,000 persons. Honorable members will be guided by the interests of the members on this. Shall we start with Honorable Wajira? Honorable members, we're trying to fix the mic. Why don't you use this other mic, Honorable Wajira, as the technical people try to fix it?
What do you mean it's a nickname? Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this motion. Of course, I support that we are dealing with an unprecedented pandemic. It's been tried to be explained by scientists, by the religious people. I think we have not gotten the right answer yet, but I support the leader of majority. I think it's also a shocker for us to actually go back to God. I think we are running away from actual issues. And I hope that at the end of the day, he will hear us, that this pandemic is lifted, because everything has stopped. Mr. Speaker, from the big nations, the superpowers in the world are actually on their knees. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that as a country, I think we have done very well in terms of our response. We started not very well, but we have improved along the way. But one thing I hope that we are able to look at right now is actually the issue of our borders. I spoke about it when we met the CS Mutahi and CS Fred Matiang'i with the delegated legislation committee. The boundary or the borderline between us and Tanzania, the border between us and Somalia, Mr. Speaker, has to be actually closed down. We must not negotiate, because the numbers that we are witnessing in Tanzania will actually affect our numbers as we are talking today. Mr. Speaker, the issue of Somalia, the borderline in Mandera and other areas, the Lamu border, Mr. Speaker, we must be very decisive as a country. Between the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Defense, we must totally lock down those borders, Mr. Speaker, because otherwise the gains that we have actually made right now will actually be taken back or plowed back by the numbers that we'll experience. And I say that because last week, Mr. Speaker, as we met and we sit with you at the Delegated Legislation Committee, we had cases of people who went to sell goats or buy goats in Somalia and came back through to Wajir. And actually now Wajir registered cases that were actually brought back by people from Somalia, buying livestock, whether camels or goat. We must be very categorical. The Ministry of Defense must take this very seriously with the Ministry of Interior and close totally the borderline between Somalia and us and between Tanzania and ourselves. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, is of course the fact that we have kind of delegated or relegated all other illnesses and forgotten that every day in this country we still lose cancer patients, 90 of them. Those numbers are alarming. Today in my constituency, an area called Ngomongo, more than almost 1,000 families are outside because of flooding. So, Mr. Speaker, we also must not forget that even if we have COVID and dealing with the issue of COVID and the response, that the emergency, the disaster institutions we have put in place must not stop working. We must not now say everything else stops, because at the end of the day, who are we protecting? It is the Kenyans. We have floods that in the last 2 months have killed almost 200 people in this country. We are not talking about that. Cancer, almost 3,000 per month. We are not talking about that. But I hope the ministry can take this chance and the county governments can take this opportunity to actually improve the institutions we have at the county levels. Why do I say that? I've said it before in this floor, Mr. Speaker, that we must make our referral hospitals be referral hospitals. Moi Referral Hospital in Eldoret, PGH in Nakuru, Kenyatta National Hospital must not be used to treat HIV or to administer ARVs, must not be used to treat malaria, must not be used to give immunization to children. They must be referral hospitals. And the only way to do that is to make sure that the dispensaries, one in Kiptangwani in my constituency, in another area, is working. Basic medication that is required, especially for this flu season. We are dealing with children with respiratory issues, which are normal, apart from the COVID, but they will escalate because of the danger of having a pre-existing condition. So we must make sure that we deal with them at that level so that anything else is escalated to referral hospital. The issue of relief food, Mr. Speaker, people in my constituency were registered through the chiefs and the DCC and the ACCs, I think almost 3 weeks ago. If you're giving people food, my friend, it cannot wait. Hunger does not wait. Let us have this being efficient and be done properly and use the Nyumba Kumi and the right frameworks to actually deliver to the people who need it. Because we have another number that we didn't have before. People who used to wash clothes and get 300 shillings to give their children food are no longer doing that because people are closing their homes. They cannot even access them to get that 300 shillings. So in terms of increasing that net, it can only get wider. So I support the motion, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But let me remind you, you have only 5 minutes, so please
you,
organize your thoughts. It's not 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first I want to commend the government for the work they have done in sensitizing people.
Honorable Jeanette, what is it, Honorable Sotsi?
But my time, Mr. Speaker, you must add my time.
Yes, you definitely have your 5 minutes, Honorable Jeanette.
Mr. Speaker, on the order paper, I can see we have 3 amendments. So, from 3 members, I think you can give direction as to.
Yes, Honorable Sotsi, you are correct. In fact, as soon as Honorable Jeanette takes his time, I'll actually address myself to that. So,
thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Jeanette.
Mr. Speaker, I want to take opportunity to thank the government for sensitizing people at the start of this pandemic, Mr. Speaker, for the press conferences that they have been holding and alerting people. In the absence of that, I think the issue will have gotten out of hand. But Mr. Speaker, as a House, we have constitutional responsibility also to oversight the government. And the government has failed in many ways, Mr. Speaker, that Kenyans didn't expect, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the fight of this pandemic of coronavirus must have a human face, Mr. Speaker. It can't be the government has not suspended the Constitution, neither has Parliament done, Mr. Speaker. I cannot overemphasize, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of police brutality, as has been said by the leaders here, Mr. Speaker. There is no country in the world, Mr. Speaker, that has reported cases of death through police brutality more than Kenya, Mr. Speaker, in the whole world, because this pandemic was an equalizer. It was happening all over the world, all over the globe, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our police force cannot behave like goons in uniform, Mr. Speaker. These are people who have been trained properly to protect lives and property of Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. That's why they are, Mr. Speaker. Unless they have instructions to do that, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, this government has not done anything that is tangible other than announcing numbers, Mr. Speaker, every 3 o'clock of the day, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is one government that could not afford to give its citizens this thing, what is called, a mask, Mr. Speaker, which is worth 3 shillings, Mr. Speaker. Leave alone food. No, let's say 20 shillings. Members of Parliament are buying in their constituencies for people masks, Mr. Speaker. We were told that there will be free sanitizers, Mr. Speaker. Kenya Pipeline will produce alcohol-based sanitizer, Mr. Speaker. Corona is almost ending. I think they have washed it with their hands. Now they are washing it with their legs, Mr. Speaker. Because we have not seen any free sanitizer in our constituency, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it cannot be business as usual, and we keep quiet. We have the mandate constitutionally to represent the people. We have sovereign power, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that is unable to feed its people, that cannot give free masks to its people, that cannot give free sanitizer to its people. What else can they do? Mr. Speaker, we are not going to allow this government to contact trace people who have coronavirus in their homes, force them into quarantine, and expect them to pay for the upkeep, Mr. Speaker. The government must pay for the upkeep of people in quarantine that they have traced through their contact, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if somebody has broken the law, you can quarantine him. No, I have not finished. I know you're not happy with what I'm saying today. Mr. Speaker, if somebody has been traced with quarantine, Mr. Speaker, and is quarantined, the government must pay that bill, Mr. Speaker. They have the money. Mr. Speaker, this money that is for the war on coronavirus, Mr. Speaker, the government must account for it shilling by shilling, Mr. Speaker, penny by penny. This country is known for people who enrich themselves through miseries, disasters. They are known. They are in offices, Mr. Speaker. This coronavirus money, whether it is the COVID fund, whether it is government fund, we want them to account to this House, Mr. Speaker, coin by coin. Look, people are discussing shamelessly 3 or 4 million shillings and mandasi, Mr. Speaker, when our people are dying of corona. People are dying of shame, Mr. Speaker. Shame, Mr. Speaker. We must condemn that act with the strongest terms possible, Mr. Speaker, that people can sit in offices and use 4 million shillings to eat tea and mandasi when people are dying of hunger, people are dying for not having masks, people are dying for not having sanitizer, people are dying out of flood, Mr. Speaker. It's very shameful, Mr. Speaker. And you call yourself government. If it it was in democracies that have matured, this government will have resigned. Mr. Speaker, we will have had a general election now, Mr. Speaker. Because if you cannot defend your people from floods, you cannot defend your people by buying the mask, Mr. Speaker, you're not worth even the name to be called government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I want this House to rise up to the occasion and hold this government accountable for every action, omission, and commission that they do against the people of this country, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I really condemn what's happening in this country. And
Very well.
It's not a check, Mr. Speaker, for doing whatever you want, as the leader said here.
Very well. Very well. Honorable members, in light of what Honorable Sotsi actually had raised earlier, there are 3 members who have actually proposed amendment to this motion. It is tidier to deal with those proposed amendment at this time, so that then members will be discussing the final motion as amended if the House decides so. We have amendments from Honorable Moses Sheboy. I'm told that is dropped. We also have amendment, Honorable members, also with it is on page 304. I'm sure it's in your machine. We have amendment from Honorable Nasil. We have amendment from Honorable Savula. And we have amendment from Honorable Nikal. We shall take them in that order. Shall we start with Honorable Nasil? So members, Honorable Nasil, you have the floor.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, marekebisho yangu kama yalivyoweza kuorodheshwa katika ratiba ya shughuli ya hii leo. Ningeomba tu Bwana Spika, kwa sababu kila wakiongea tuna dakika 5 peke yake, ningeomba tu wenzangu wanipe nafasi. Bwana Spika, Bwana Spika, kuna masala ambayo kwamba ni ya muhimu sana, na nimeweza kuzungumza na nikataja tayari ndugu zangu, lugha ya Kiswahili ni lugha yetu, na Bwana Spika, nitadai dakika zangu. Tayari nimeweza kuzungumza ya kwa kama ilivyoweza kuorodheshwa. Asante sana Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, jambo hili la kuhusiana na mambo ya quarantine. Mambo ya karantina kama walivyoweza kuzungumza wenzetu ndugu yetu Junet, Mheshimiwa Duale na wengine wote. Huwezi kuchukua Mkenya ambaye hana hatua yoyote na bila kwa kutaka kwake akawa anaambiwa anafaa kukaa katika quarantine. Na baada ya kukaa katika ile quarantine, Bwana Spika, kisha unamwambia alipe shilingi 2,000 kwa siku moja. Bwana Spika, kando na hiyo, tunazungumza ya kwa kando na wale ambao watakuwa wenye kupelekwa katika karantina. Lazima serikali ikubali, kama ilivyo katika nchi nyingine zote katika dunia, watu ambao nyumba zao wanaweza kukaa katika karantini waweze kukubaliwa. Ni jambo ambalo nimezungumza na Wizara ya Afya, ni jambo ambalo tumeweza kujadili katika serikali ya kaunti. Hivi leo ni aibu ya kwa watu wanazuiliwa kuweza kutoka katika zile karantina, kisa na sababu ni amana. Ikawa mwisho, Bwana Spika,
hoja gani ya nidhamu majority leader?
Speaker, I think the gist of the amendment of Honorable Nasir is to ask the Select Committee of the National Government, CDF, to propose amendments for consideration by the House to permit for the utilization of CDF. So I think that is, no, I'm saying that is this amendment. So I think you should stick to that.
Order, Honorable Nasil is on the floor. The amendment as read, and it is in page 305. Stick to that. Honorable Nasil, order member. Honorable Nasil, you are moving that specific.
Ni mbili, ziko mbili, ziko sehemu mbili.
There is the
Nadhani ameweza kufahamu, ziko sehemu mbili.
Bwana
Spika, naomba zile dakika zangu zote ambazo kwamba zimechukuliwa, tafadhali karani ambaye kwamba yuko muweze kuhakikisha ya kuwa watu wa Mvita waweze kuwakilishwa kisawasawa. Bwana Spika, kwanza nimezungumza kuhusiana na ile amana ya karantina. Si sawa wa Kenya kuweza kuchukuliwa na kuweza kuambiwa ya kuwa waweze kulipa ile amana. Pili, nimezungumza ya kuwa wale ambao wako na nafasi ndani ya nyumba zao kuweza kukaa ndani ya majumba kukaa karantina waweze kukubaliwa. Ni jambo ambalo Wizara ya Afya wamekubali, ni jambo ambalo serikali ya county wamekubali kuweza kuliangalia. Ni aibu ya kuwa leo serikali ya kaunti ya Mombasa tayari washatumia zaidi ya milioni 20 kulipa sekta ambayo kwamba ni ya serikali kuu kwa sababu ya kuwatoa watu ambao wameweza kuzuiliwa. Zaidi ya Bwana Spika. Na pili, Bwana Spika, nataka kuwasihi, kuwarai na kuwaomba kwa unyenyekevu kila Mkenya ambaye anatusikiza. Bwana Spika, kama Mheshimiwa Duale alivyozungumza ya kuwa ile wenye kuhusika na mambo ya lockdown na mambo ya secession, Bwana Spika,
yes, what is it? What is it? And I'm sure Honorable Nasiru, you're almost done. But what is it, Honorable Malwa?
Mr. Speaker, there's a process and the procedure of bringing an amendment. We've been listening carefully to the Honorable Member from Vita. When you propose amendment, you should say, I'm proposing to amendment to be this way, ABCD. And you continue giving reasons why. He is debating, Mr. Speaker, instead of proposing what are the amendments. Up to now, we don't know what are the amendments. He's telling the stories instead of proposing the amendments.
Bwana Spika, Kiswahili nilianza na kuzungumza Bwana Spika.
Honorable Nasil. Honorable Malwa, Honorable Nasil did move an amendment. If you had his Kiswahili, he actually moved. Honorable Nasil, just conclude. What is it, minority leader?
Mr. Speaker, my point of order is if a motion is framed in English and moved in English and seconded in English, how do you move amendment in Kiswahili? I mean, how would it fit? Even if he had moved amendment, because I heard him speak in Kiswahili throughout. So we don't mind him moving amendment, but it should be in English and then he can contribute in Kiswahili.
I'll deal with that issue. Majority leader, we still have to go to the substance of this motion, but what is it, majority leader?
Speaker, I have a lot of respect for the member from Vita, but I want to make two things very clear. He has not moved his amendment. Number two, and when he moves the amendment, he explains, then he has a seconder. Secondly, in the order paper, the amendment is in English. The amendment in the order paper is in English. It's not in Swahili. So he has no luxury to speak in Swahili. Some of us from North and the lake, we have a problem with Swahili.
You can't, Honorable Junet, you can't have a point of order over another point of order over another point of order. Minority leader has raised a point of order. Minority leader has raised a point of order on the use of Kiswahili. Order members. Honorable Nasil has used Swahili. When we were moving, when we are adopting the Kiswahili standing order, what exactly he has done is allowable. What exactly he has done is allowable. And he has said, he used a Kiswahili word to say, to move that motion. Honorable Nasil, what you should do is to conclude, get a seconder, and then the House will have an opportunity to discuss that. Conclude, Honorable Nasil.
Bwana Spika, nadhani tetesi hapa ilipo. Naomba wenzangu waweze kunisikiza. Nadhani tetesi hapa ilipo, kuna miswada miwili ambayo kwamba nimeweza kuyaleta. Ya kwanza ni kuhusiana na fedha za CDF. Na ninavyoona hisia za wenzangu, hiyo ya CDF ningeomba iweze kuteremshwa, isiwekwe katika orodha. Hii ya pili, na nadhani ambao ni jambo ambalo kila moja ananifahamu. Na nina imani ya kwa hakuna yoyote hapa atakayeweza kukubali Mkenya alipishwe amana ambayo hana hatia yoyote. Nimeweza kuzungumza hii kwa lugha ile inaweza kufahamikiana. Nikimalizia, Bwana Spika, nataka kutoa usisitizo kwa unyenyekevu, kama vile anavyozungumza Mheshimiwa Duale, ya kuwa hakuna yoyote, hili bunge pamoja na magavana hawana ruhusa ya kusema ya kwa sehemu hii hakuna watu kupita kuhusiana na lockdown. Kwa hivyo nawasihi wenzangu wote, tuchunge hali zilivyo. Bwana Spika,
Honorable Nasir, we have to be tidy on this. Please stick to your amendment. Don't speak to the mother motion. You are speaking on the second part of your amendment, which deals with that the government considers waiving charges payable by persons who are under mandatory quarantine, excluding those isolated due to violation of social distancing and curfew requirements. Stick to that specifically.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Nadhani nimeweza kufahamika kuhusiana na hilo, na ningemuomba ndugu yangu Abdisalan aweze kuniunga mkono kwenye jambo hili. Ikiwezekana Bwana Spika, kwa ruhusa yako, kwa msimamo
Speaker, for avoidance of doubt, I'm not Honorable Nasir and I can choose the language to speak. So for that matter, I think there is no part in the standing order that can tell you when the mover speaks in English.
Don't deal with that. Proceed.
Then,
Just a second.
so, Mr. Speaker, I rise to second this motion. Speaker, I rise to second this motion. I am wondering that my colleagues are creating a bit of confusion when we have very important business to transact here. Speaker, as we are speaking, so many people are placed under quarantine and they have no funds to clear that bill. We have not only put them in very difficult position, but we have risked their lives. Remember, when you are placed in a quarantine in a hotel, and the hotel owner expects you to clear that bill, it is unfortunate that despite having appropriated 2.6 million for Corona intervention, that the government has not set aside some amount of money to clear bills for those placed under mandatory quarantine. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, it is also crystal clear that we have problems in our priority ranking in regards to intervention of Corona. By the way, the 2.6 million we are talking about seems to be only meant for Corona-infected areas and not the 290 constituencies in this country. Because as we are speaking, all the members of parliament can confirm that the only intervention ongoing in our constituencies is only cessation of movement and curfew. Then what are we appropriating this money for? Speaker, we must get our priorities right, and we must carry out real needs assessment in all the constituencies. And priority number one remains food. Secondly, Speaker, as a number of members have raised correctly, we are in a state of confusion. This committee called the National Emergency Response Committee on Coronavirus must be cascaded down to the counties and constituency level. Those structures must communicate from the grassroots level what is happening so that they can make informed decisions. Otherwise, this committee will only remain committee established for counties where corona have so far been positive. And we are not willing to take that direction. Speaker, those structures must be cascaded down to the county level.
You really must, members.
Speaker.
It must be very clear. We are not dealing with the original motion. We are dealing with an amendment.
Speaker,
Honorable member, you are seconding. Yeah. On that aspect alone, do not discuss the other part of the motion.
Speaker, these things are intertwined without avoidance of doubt. But having said that, Speaker, I can assure you that that people who are placed under curfew, who are supposed to have their bills cleared,
very well,
is spread all over the country.
Very well. Very well, honorable members. It is important for the members to appreciate now what we are dealing with. We have a motion, and there is a proposal of an amendment by Honorable Nasil. I shall propose a question on that specific amendment, and then the members will dispense with that. You will notice that Honorable Nasil did drop the first part of the amendment. And so I will propose on the second one that the motion be amended by inserting the following paragraph immediately after paragraph C, that the government considers waiving charges payable by persons who are under mandatory quarantine, excluding those isolated to violation of social distancing and curfew requirements. Is it the mood of the House that we put the question? Let me establish that. Honorable members, that I put the question on that particular amendment. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, I'll put the question that the motion be amended by inserting the following paragraph immediately after paragraph C, that the government considers waiving charges payable by persons who are under mandatory quarantine, excluding those isolated due to violation of social distancing and curfew requirements. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, we have another amendment by Honorable Nyikal. What is it? What is Honorable Kaluma? What is out of order?
The House has passed second part excluding means we are giving people who should be enforcing curfew and other laws the power to send people to remand. That part is the function of the court. Why don't we say in principle, because that is outrightly unlawful, that anybody in quarantine should not pay. Oh, sorry.
What is out of order, and Honorable Karuma, because
Speaker, we have passed this resolution.
Are you discussing what the House has just passed?
There is an illegality.
Order, you know, Honorable Karuma, I know you know the standing order very well. The House has just made a decision. It is impossible to revisit that on this particular session at this time. You can do a further amendment as members are proposing. Honorable Nyikal has an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to propose an amendment to this motion, which overall I support. And this is in relation to paragraph D2, which in general is support, is acceptable. We need an institution. But my amendment is by deleting the words "are" and the word "national" in the paragraph, that is one, and deleting the word "facility" and replacing it with the word "facilities," and deleting the last word, which is with a bed capacity of at least 1,000 persons. Mr. Speaker, I support the original intention of having the facility put in place.
You have an A and B, right?
Yes, I actually have an A which has got the A which I've done 1, 2, 3, and B, I get you, Mr. Speaker, and therefore the following new paragraph D2 will now read, establishment of suitable health facilities for the treatment and management of infectious and viral diseases such as COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, all I'm asking is that instead of just asking that the government establishes one big hospital, we actually make provisions so that they can establish many hospitals. And with infectious diseases, Mr. Speaker, if you have one main hospital, which is a distance away, it means you will be transporting people from distant places of the country and bringing to this place. In the process, actually disseminating the disease and spreading the disease. So it's an extremely good motion here, but if you amend it, then we'll also make sure that various at the county level, these facilities are established of the same standard so that when people are sick, they're treated the nearest place to them without being moved further. Mr. Speaker, that is the essence of my amendment, and I think it improves the whole of the motion, and I would ask all the members to support that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Who seconds? Who seconds?
And I ask Honorable Martin Owino to second this amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second this amendment with the fact that in disease management, we are not looking at clinical aspect of it only, but we are also looking at the primary aspect. Access is a key issue in any disease management and prevention, and therefore centralizing treatment would not be ideal in this situation. As I second, I also applaud the original mover of this motion, so that UHC comes in if the national body also chooses to support those counties and sub-counties level 4s and level 5. Mr. Speaker, I second.
Honorable members, I will propose a question before putting it, that the motion be amended in paragraph D2 by A1, deleting the words are unnatural, 2, deleting the word facility and substituting thereof with the word facilities, 3, deleting the words with a bed capacity of at least 1,000 persons, B, inserting the following new paragraph, the establishment of suitable health facility for the treatment and management of infectious and viral diseases such as COVID-19. Is it the mood of the House I put the question? Very well. Yeah, very well. Honorable members, I'll proceed to put the question, which is that the motion be amended in paragraph D2 by A1, deleting the words are unnatural, 2, deleting the word facility and substituting thereof with the word facilities, 3, deleting the words with a bed capacity of at least 1,000 persons. Order, Honorable Wanga. B, inserting the following new sub-paragraph, 3, establishment of suitable health facility for the treatment and management of infectious and viral diseases such as COVID-19. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, we have the final amendment by Honorable Ayub Savula.
Consultation has still going.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Notice given that the Member of Parliament for Lugari Ayub Savula intend to move the following amendment to the motion on other measures to address the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. That the motion be amended by A, inserting the following new paragraphs immediately after the following paragraph. Further appreciating the role of the National Assembly in taking necessary legislative intervention and offering the necessary political and legislative support whenever required. Concerned that COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the country's economy and the economic development outcome are expected to be seriously affected by the interruption caused by the virus both globally and locally. Deeply concerned that the government faces significant physical challenges as the national economy faces contraction because of the effect of COVID-19 pandemic, a situation made worse by the depreciation of the shilling, and the government may in the current financial year not be able to meet its loan obligation. B, inserting the following paragraph immediately after paragraph C, that the government of Kenya should urgently engage multilateral and bilateral lenders with a view of negotiating loan obligations with emphasis on waiver of interest and extension on the repayment period, as well as asking for total waiver on some of the loans so as to free up money to enable the government to contain the spread of the pandemic, cushion Kenyans against its social and economic effects, and address economic impact of the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, my amendment to the motion by the leader of majority are pegged on the following facts: that the revenue collected by KRA is going to drop because the economic activities are low. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, after we pass the budget as the National Assembly and it goes to the President, after the President signs the warrant for expenditure of the cash, the first charge by the Treasury is to pay the loans. I thank the leader of majority for having had that noble idea to bring this motion so that we can discuss as members of parliament and find a way on how to cushion our economy. Mr. Speaker, the main loans are from the Chinese government. This is a global pandemic. The Chinese government must agree, or should agree. We renegotiate the terms and the condition of the loans so that we save the economy of this country. Mr. Speaker, the president has sat with banks, management of banks, CEOs of the banks. They have agreed to restructure loans for Kenyan individuals and businessmen who are doing business. The international community, China included, must also follow suit. And I ask the CS Treasury to move quickly after we pass these amendments so that we can save the country's economy. I'll ask Honorable Soti to second. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the amendments. Thank you.
Honorable Soti. Honorable Soti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think, Mr. Speaker, I stand to second this amendment by Lugari member, my good friend, Honorable Savula. They are very progressive amendments because, Mr. Speaker, you realize now the public debt is now 62% of the GDP. And with the effects, economic effects of corona, we are likely to get to a situation where this country will be unable to pay some of these debts. So this is very progressive, and I want to encourage members to support these amendments. And has proposed two approaches, that is bilateral engagement and multilateral engagement. I think the government should focus more on multilateral engagement, and I know already efforts are being done at the level of African Union to come together and push for debt deferment and even cancellation of debt. So for those few remarks, because of time, I support. I second, sorry.
Very well, honorable members, I will propose a question that the motion be amended by inserting the following new paragraphs immediately after the following paragraph, further appreciating the role of National Assembly in taking necessary legislative interventions and offering the necessary political and legislative support wherever required. One, concerned that COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the country's economy and that economic development outcomes are expected to be seriously affected by the interruption caused by the virus, both globally and locally. Two, deeply concerned that the government faces significant fiscal challenges as the national economy faces contraction because of the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, a situation made worse by the depreciation of the shilling, and the government may in the current financial year not be able to meet its loans obligations. B, inserting the following new paragraph immediately after paragraph C. D, that the government of Kenya should urgently engage multilateral and bilateral lenders with a view to renegotiate loan obligations with emphasis on waivers of interest and extensions on the repayment period, as well as asking for vital waivers on some of the loans so as to free up money to enable the government to contain the spread of the pandemic, caution Kenyans against its social and economic effects, and address economic impact of the pandemic. Is it the mood of the House that we put the question? Let me establish that. Honorable members, that I do put the question on this amendment. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of the contrary opinion say nay? No. The ayes have it. Honorable members, in that, Honorable Barire. Honorable members, I will put the question that the motion be amended as proposed by Honorable Ayub Savula, which is that A, inserting the following new paragraphs immediately after the following paragraph, further appreciating the role of the National Assembly in taking necessary legislative interventions and offering the necessary political and legislative support wherever required. One, concerned that COVID-19 has disrupted the country's economy and that economic development outcomes are expected to be seriously affected by the interruption caused by the virus both globally and locally. Two, deeply concerned that the government faces significant fiscal challenges as the national economy faces contraction because of the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, a situation made worse by the depreciation of the shilling, and the government may in the current financial year not be able to meet its loan obligation. B, inserting the following paragraph immediately after paragraph C. D, that the government of Kenya should urgently engage multilateral and bilateral lenders with a view to renegotiate loan obligations, with emphasis on waivers of interest and extensions on the repayment period, as well as asking for total waivers on some of the loans so as to free up money to enable the government to obtain the spread of the pandemic, caution Kenyans against its social and economic effects, and address economic impact of the pandemic. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, in effect, what that means is that now the original motion is amended, is accordingly amended. And as we speak to those motions, you'll be speaking as it is amended. Now, if we had time, honorable members would have gone to the original motion. It is 1 p.m. I'm sure this will be coming up again in the order paper, so then members can engage on it. Honorable members, the time being 1 p.m., this House started adjourned until Wednesday, 6th May 2020 at 2:30 p.m.
pandemic, that the motion be amended by A, inserting the following new paragraphs immediately after the following paragraph, further appreciating the role of the National Assembly in taking necessary legislative intervention and offering the necessary political and legislative support whenever required. Concerned that COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the country's economy and the economic development outcome are expected to be seriously affected by the interruption caused by the virus both globally and locally.